Welcome back to Pokemon episode summaries. Today, I'll be doing episode 355. Pearls are Spoink's best friend. The episode begins with not Ash and the gang, but Team Rocket, as a full moon was in the sky at late night, while Team Rocket was currently cramming inside a phone booth, fighting with each other for space, shoving each other around, trying to get in front of the video phone, because Giovanni was about to show up on screen any moment, because they had phoned him. Since they had realized that it was time for them to make a call, because every few days or months, weeks, whatever it was, they had to make a call to Giovanni and give an update on their progress. And they were fighting with each other because they each wanted to talk to Giovanni individually. Suddenly, Giovanni appeared on screen, having picked up the call, and asks them why they had called in the first place, seemingly forgetting that it was time for Team Rocket's check-in, since, he had so many other fucking employees to deal with. So Team Rocket reminded him. So Giovanni asked, "Hey, do you guys have any progress? Like, why are you calling me then?" Unfortunately, it was then revealed that Team Rocket all wanted to talk to Giovanni individually because they wanted to each come up with their own excuse as to why they've made absolutely no fucking progress whatsoever since their last call. Giovanni questioned why this was, and asked if Team Rocket had at least managed to recruit a few members to Team Rocket from Hoenn, and Team Rocket simply confirmed that they have made it to Hoenn, but other than that, they hadn't gotten any new members, since Meowth argued that it was hard to establish a division of a team in a whole new region, especially since not just anyone could join Team Rocket, you had to meet special qualifications. Although Giovanni interrupts Meowth, stating his belief that any other trio of Team Rocket members could have easily recruited new members by now. Team Rocket became embarrassed, not wanting to be scolded by Giovanni, as they simply promised that they would try harder, leading Giovanni to say that he wanted Team Rocket to assemble new members quick, or otherwise he would replace them. Team Rocket begged Giovanni to not replace them ever, and always give them another chance, leading Giovanni to state that he would only consider this if Team Rocket at least had made progress on the secret base that he had asked them to establish. Leading Team Rocket to embarrassingly admit that they had made the base, but it got destroyed. If you remember the events of the episode where Professor Birch and Professor Oak both brought the starters, and then the starters got captured in the base, and the base got destroyed. Yeah, I remember that. Giovanni was immensely frustrated at this, and he was so angry that he decided to reveal to them that all of the previous failures that Team Rocket had reported in Hoenn, because they had done usual routine checkups off screen, but this was the only one that was really eventful. Giovanni had basically tallied up the costs of all of Team Rocket's past blunders in Hoenn, and he was very extra bitchy, since they had cost Team Rocket a lot of money, and stated that because of this, he was genuinely considering not just replacing Team Rocket with any random trio, but replacing them with their arch enemies, Butch and Cassidy, confident that they could get the job done, where Jesse and James had failed. Although Team Rocket desperately begged Giovanni to give them another chance for real, since they did not want Butch and Cassidy to replace them, promising they would finish the job. Giovanni sure hoped that they would, and stated that he would give Team Rocket another chance, but if they didn't report better news next time, then they may not be as lucky next time. Giovanni then cuts the video call short, but before he does, his Persian comes up to the screen and taunts Team Rocket by sticking its tongue out at them. Team Rocket was particularly mad at Persian, but Meowth was especially mad because, he hated Persian, and he began to bite at the video phone, trying to kill Persian, but Jesse and James pull him off, reminding him that Persian wasn't physically there. Although Jesse and James did admit to Meowth that they were frustrated as well, but they decided to turn this frustration into motivation, and stated that if they were going to get replaced, then they just had to try harder, and perform a capture that was bigger and better than any capture they had done previously, and they all cheered, declaring that it was now going to be a new beginning for them, when suddenly Jesse's Wobbuffet came out of its Pokeball forcibly and crushed the telephone booth. Only after making Team Rocket struggle, since they were already struggling for room with just the three of them, but with Wobbuffet in there, yeah, that was fucking painful. There was no room. The next day, Ash and the gang were taking time at a river to take a break and refresh themselves, with Ash, Max, May, and Pikachu dipping their heads into the river to wash their faces and also brush their teeth as well, while Brock prepared some breakfast. Brock then set up the portable table that they always had with them, likely in Brock's huge-ass backpack, and he stated that breakfast was ready, which was some bread rolls and croissants and other shit, just bread shit, and they all sat down and began to enjoy. Ash also decided to send out his Torkoal, while May decided to send out her Skitty. Why didn't they send out their other Pokemon, you may ask? Well, who knows? Maybe they felt their Pokeballs jiggle or some shit, and they thought that they were hungry, so they only sent them out. I don't know. But regardless, Torkoal and Skitty started eating some Pokemon food that Brock prepared for them, when suddenly the bushes nearby started to rumble, and everyone looked up at them, stopping their little chit-chat. Ash and the gang didn't see anything, though, so they went back to eating, but Skitty seemed to sense something as it rushed into the bushes to investigate them. May, not wanting anything to happen to her Skitty, runs to stop it, only to see Skitty voluntarily come out of the bushes on its own. And it was running out of the bushes, scared as hell, and it was so scared that it immediately jumped into her arms as May put them out. Torkoal, Pikachu, Max, Brock, and Ash all rush off from the table to join May and Skitty and see what had frightened Skitty, and they look into the bushes closer to see what they had missed the first time, only to see a Spoink leap out of the bushes, seeming like it's looking for something. Max had seen a Spoink before, and realized something was off about this one, but he couldn't quite put his finger on it, so he asked Ash to use his Pokedex on it, and Ash did so, because he wanted to find out more about a Spoink anyways, since he didn't even know that a Spoink existed. So when he scanned it with his Dex, he saw that the picture of it. Everyone realized that Spoink was supposed to have a pearl on its head, but it did not, with Max being the first one to point this out. Obviously, everyone wondered where the fuck the pearl had went, so Ash tried to look at his Pokedex for more information as to if it was possible for the pearl to disappear, but all he found was that the pearl was the source of Spoink's strong psychic power, which meant that Spoink was likely tired out due to the fact that it didn't have any psychic power anymore. Torkoal feels very bad that Spoink didn't have its psychic power anymore, so it begins to cry. May tried to comfort Torkoal, but in doing so, she just ended up reminding it that Spoink had lost its Pearl and Psychic powers, so this just made Torkoal cry even more. Ash, not wanting to hear Torkoal's crying anymore, and just wanting to be helpful to the Spoink, told the Spoink, knowing that it was extremely distressed upon not having its Pearl, that he and the gang would help it find it. In response, Spoink bounces in happiness, and it leads Ash and the gang through the forest. At first, Ash and the gang thought that Spoink was just searching aimlessly for the Pearl and was taking them along for the trip, but eventually, as they continued to walk, they eventually stopped at a tree by the edge of a cliff. And Ash and the gang are soon able to figure out that this was the spot where it initially lost the Pearl in the first place, as Spoink proceeded to act out how it managed to lose it. So it did so by falling over by a tree, acting out sleeping. And then Spoink apparently rolled over in its sleep, and then Spoink pointed towards the cliff, leading Max to narrate everything that Spoink had just done, and come to the conclusion that Spoink must have just been sleeping, when suddenly, its Pearl went off the cliff. So now, it was lost somewhere down the cliff. Knowing this, Ash and the gang and Spoink just went down to the cliff, and Ash suggested that they start looking at the cliff's bottom, and Spoink agreed with this, and although Brock decided to call out his Mudkip to aid in the search. Since after a while of searching, they hadn't been able to find the Pearl at all, so Brock thought that Mudkip could be of assistance. Eventually, the group decides to split up a little bit to cover more ground, with Brock, May, Mudkip, and Pikachu and Ash going one way, whereas Max, Torkoal, and Spoink went another way. And while Max, Torkoal, and Spoink were searching, they soon noticed a pink ball visible in some bushes, and Spoink immediately jumped for joy and used Psychic to lift up the ball and place it on its head. It was then that Ash, May, Brock, and Pikachu arrived and saw that Spoink had something on its head and wondered if Spoink had actually found the Pearl. But even though they only saw the Pearl from behind, as Spoink was turned around, they saw that the Pearl didn't really look like the Pearl in the Pokédex. Just then, Spoink turned around, and Ash and the gang now knew why the Pearl didn't look right, because it wasn't a Pearl after all, but instead a very confused Igglybuff, obviously confused as to why the fuck it was just lifted onto Spoink's head. Just then, a girl showed up who was the owner of Igglybuff and tried to get it back from Spoink, but Spoink hopped away, still thinking that it was actually its Pearl. This makes the girl cry, so Brock quickly takes action and cuts off the Spoink, stopping it from moving any further, and informs it that it actually didn't have its Pearl, but instead a girl's Igglybuff, and tells it to give the Igglybuff back to its trainer. Spoink barely understood what Brock said, but it had stopped moving, so this allowed Max to pull the Igglybuff off of Spoink and give it back to the girl. So the girl thanks Max and runs off, leading Ash and the gang and the Pokemon that were out to continue following Spoink, trying to find its Pearl, not separating this time. Spoink was becoming more and more miserable as time went on due to not having its Pearl, but just then, they all noticed a Voltorb in the middle of the path, and Spoink thought that the Voltorb was close enough to its Pearl, since it was also around, and used Psychic to place it on its fucking head. But it was just then that the Voltorb's trainer, or boy, showed up, looking for his Voltorb. Just like with Igglybuff, Ash and the gang informed Spoink that this Voltorb was not its Pearl, and they take it off of it to give it back to its trainer, but just then, the Voltorb lets out a thunderbolt, shocking them all, likely angry from everyone touching it. Once the Voltorb was back to its trainer, Ash and the gang and Spoink continued on, and soon enough, they came across an Electrode now. Just like with the Voltorb, Spoink thought the Electrode would more than suffice as its Pearl, and used Psychic on it to try and lift it onto its head, and it did this, making the Electrode very, very fucking confused and shit. Just like before, Ash and the gang tried to tell Spoink that this was not its Pearl, despite it being a round object, and tried to take Electrode off, but Electrode just gets angry and uses Explosion. The Electrode then runs off, because it was just a wild Electrode, and Ash and the gang and all the Pokemon that were hit by the explosion, including Spoink, just sit there, tired as fuck from all of the bullshit that had just happened recently, when suddenly, they all got up as a Mudkip alerted them to something. It had spotted a round object in the grass. Ash and the gang immediately recognized it from the Pokedex as Spoink's Pearl, and Brock hurriedly went to go pick it up, and he then gave it to Spoink, as Spoink took it from him by using Psychic, and placed it on its head. Just lying in the grass, huh? That was convenient. Anyways, Spoink was very, very, very happy to have its Pearl back, as everyone congratulated it for this, and Spoink then mimics a wave to say goodbye to Ash and the gang, and begins to bounce away, not having to stay by Ash and the gang anymore, although Torkoal begins to cry, both sad that Spoink was leaving, but also happy that Spoink was happy as well. May, Max, and Pikachu try their best to console Torkoal, with Pikachu even trying to hug it, but Torkoal just cries harder, happy at the fact that there were people who cared about it enough to try and console him. As Spoink bounces away, Ash and the gang say their goodbyes to it, but unbeknownst to them, Team Rocket was in the bushes nearby, very determined to capture Ash and the gang, more determined than ever after Giovanni had threatened to replace them. They knew they had to do something, and fast. So, it's revealed that Team Rocket had dug one of their traditional pitfall traps, and the Ash and the gang fell into it as the ground collapsed beneath them, as soon as they said goodbye to Spoink. Ash and the gang instantly started complaining about their injuries, as Team Rocket then revealed themselves, popping out of the bushes, and laughing at Ash and the gang's misfortune. Max instantly demands that Team Rocket release them from the hole, but naturally, Team Rocket refuses, and also informs Ash and the gang that they now no longer went by Team Rocket, they went by New Team Rocket, because it was a new era for them, with Meowth adding that in this new era, Team Rocket was going to be more tactical and less stupid. And Jesse proved this by cutting a nearby rope that no one had noticed before, and this caused a rock tied to the rope to fall from a nearby tree, which in turn caused a net to wrap around Ash and the gang. capture them inside along with their Pokemon. Basically, a rock was up in the tree, and when the rock fell, it deployed a net down from the tree because it basically released a whole bunch of weight that was keeping the net up in the tree in the first place. The rock then hits the ground, which causes the net to go up into the air, hanging from the tree. Ash and the gang would not be tracked for long, though, as Team Rocket instantly got distracted, talking about how awesome they were for being able to come up with a true plan to catch Ash and the gang. But this distraction allowed Ash to send out Corfish, who completely cut the net, setting everyone free as they started to fall to the ground. During the fall, though, Spoink ended up losing its pearl off of his head once again, and Meowth happened to catch it, even though he didn't intentionally mean to. Ash and the gang quickly got up from the fall, and Ash thanked Corfish for its help. Although Team Rocket were extremely fucking pissed off at the net being cut, so Jesse sent out Seviper, and James sent out Cacnea to battle Ash and the gang to try and capture them again. Although Cacnea hugged James first, prickling him obviously. The battle then begins with Corfish going in for a Bubble Beam on Seviper, but Seviper dodges and goes for a wrap on Corfish, but Corfish dodges this. Although Cacnea then goes in for a Pin Missile on Corfish. And although Corfish does get hit by this, it uses Harden to negate the damage, and then it uses a Crab Hammer on both Seviper and Cacnea to send them back into Jesse and James. Corfish then teams up with Mudkip as they both use their water attacks, with Corfish using Bubble Beam and Mudkip using Water Gun to blast Team Rocket off. Ash and the gang celebrate their win, as Max goes to see if Spoink was okay, only to see that Spoink was sad by a tree. So Max went up to it to ask it what was wrong and why it was sad when it just got its pearl back, only for Spoink to get up and turn to reveal that, much to Max's shock, its pearl was missing again, leading Ash to come to the conclusion that Team Rocket must have taken it, either if it was intentional or not. And they immediately run in the direction that Team Rocket had blasted off in to reclaim the pearl once again. Speaking of Team Rocket, they, along with Cacnea and Seviper, ended up blasting off somewhere in the forest, falling first into a pine tree before falling out of that as well. And when they fell, Meowth dropped the pearl that he had caught. Jessie immediately sees the pearl when she gets back up, and James and Meowth get up as well, and Jessie grabs the pearl, and was amazed instantly with how gorgeous she thought it was, and asks Meowth where he found it. And Meowth reveals that the Spoink must have dropped it, as he recognized it from being on its head, although he called Spoink the stupid pig thing, which was pretty accurate. Jessie wanted to know if it was valuable in any way, so James pulled out some cards that he had, likely given to him by Team Rocket at some point when they were being transferred to the Hoenn region. Because, you know, maybe Team Rocket wanted our regular Team Rocket trio to know about some of the Pokemon in the Hoenn region, so they gave him these cards that sort of acted as Pokedex entries. And once James looked at Spoink's card, after shuffling through some others, such as one that focused on a Seviper, one that focused on a Skitty, one that focused on a Lotad, and one that focused on a Mudkip, he found the same entry in the Pokedex, just on a card this time, that explained how the pearl was the source of Spoink's psychic powers. Jessie didn't care about the psychic power part. She just wanted to have it to wear, since she thought that it was super gorgeous, and proceeded to have a whole bunch of fantasies of her wearing it to make herself look extremely beautiful, and she thought that it could even up her social status. James sighs in annoyance as Jessie rubs the pearl up against her, and Meowth then suggests something different, being that they could give the pearl to Giovanni as a present, since it was worth a lot. Jessie and James wondered what Giovanni could even do with the pearl, though, and Meowth suggests that he could either sell it, since it was worth a lot, or he could put it on his ring to make his ring extra blingy. But James jumped in, telling Meowth that that wouldn't work, since the pearl would make the ring too heavy for his finger. So instead, Meowth suggests that he make the pearl part of a crown. He basically used it as like a crown jewel, so to speak. As Meowth fantasized about this, Jessie and James actually fantasized about it as well, as they actually liked the idea, and the three of them all got happy, having fantasies about shit that Giovanni could bestow upon them, like he was their king, and they were being rewarded, perhaps even with promotions. But then their fantasies were interrupted when Ash and the gang had caught up to them, along with Spoink, and May was the one who instantly demanded that they hand over Spoink's pearl, but Team Rocket just taunts them by laughing and declines, running away, recalling Seviper and Cacnea into their Pokeballs as they ran. Ash and the gang gave chase, but eventually Team Rocket ran into a crowd of a whole bunch of people and Pokemon outside of the forest. This crowd of people was due to a fair that was going on, or a carnival if you will, where a whole bunch of acts were happening, and Ash and the gang eventually arrived at this fair like Team Rocket had, but unfortunately they had lost track of Team Rocket in the swarm of people. Ash and the gang and Spoink looked around for Team Rocket, but all they could see were the multitude of people performing for the carnival, such as a man balancing on a board suspended on a barrel, and another dude walking on stilts. Spoink, however, took interest in another act, while Ash and the gang were busy searching for the pearl, and hopped over to this act, which was a guy juggling. And the juggler soon became confused, as one of the balls he was juggling floats away from him, because Spoink happened to be using Psychic to bring this ball onto its head, trying to basically use it as a replacement for its pearl, just as it had tried the Igglybuff Voltorb and Electrode. Ash and the gang heard the confused juggler, so they ran over to him and saw that Spoink had took his ball, so they scolded Spoink, explaining to it that it didn't get to have that ball, and Max forcibly took it from Spoink's head and gave it back to the juggler, with Spoink unable to escape Max even if it wanted to, since May, Ash, and Brock were cornering the Spoink. Ash and the gang and Spoink then resumed their search for the pearl, but Spoink got into more mischief yet again, as Ash and the gang and Spoink passed by a psychic inside her tent that was showing some people their futures using a crystal ball, apparently, when Spoink spotted the crystal ball and used Psychic to lift the crystal ball onto its head, freaking the psychic out. No pun intended. Ash and the gang notice that Spoink now had the crystal ball on its head, and they see the psychic and her customers freaking out. So they run over to the tent, and they pull the crystal ball off of Spoink, with Brock doing most of the heavy lifting, and Brock gives the crystal ball back to the psychic. May then tells Spoink that it should probably calm down, and tells it that the gang would find the pearl for it, and Spoink could just watch, so it didn't get into any trouble, although Spoink wasn't too fond of this, since, it wanted to find its own pearl. And it tries to guilt trip Ash and the gang by giving sad eyes. Meanwhile, as for Team Rocket, they were walking through the crowd, looking at a variety of different entertaining acts, such as a man breaking a rope that was tied around his arms with his brute strength. James was excited by this, while Jesse was just excited at the fact that they had finally escaped from Ash and the gang, and they didn't seem to be following them anymore. Suddenly, a strange Feebas flies through the air, and lands straight in James' hands as he catches it. At first, James was shocked, realizing that this Feebas was strange because it could fucking fly, but then it was revealed that this Feebas actually belonged to none other than the Magikarp salesman that had scammed James like 10,000 million fucking times in the past. I cannot believe this dude just keeps coming back. He's been in every single series. The only characters who have been in every series are like Ash, Brock, Misty, Ash's mom, and Oak, and fucking this random dude. Anyways, James knew that it belonged to the Magikarp salesman, as he heard the Magikarp salesman calling for him. So James ran over to the Magikarp salesman, who was standing at a little stand he set up, and the Magikarp salesman instantly tried to get James to buy it. James realizes that the Magikarp salesman must have fucking thrown the Feebas right at him, and it couldn't actually fly. So James obviously wasn't that interested in the Feebas, and also he just didn't want to buy the Feebas because it was coming from the fucking Magikarp salesman. And James explained that he would never buy something from the Magikarp salesman again, as he would never allow himself to be tricked by him ever again. And he demanded that the Magikarp salesman actually give him a refund for the times that he swindled him before with like 2 different Magikarp. The Magikarp salesman argued back that he'd consider giving James a refund if he bought the Feebas. Surprisingly, James didn't fall for this, and declared that he would never let the salesman swindle him again, and threw the Feebas right at the salesman and folded his arms in anger. Just then, Jessie came up to the Magikarp salesman, and although she didn't see what the Pokemon actually was, she saw James throw something towards the Magikarp salesman, so she questioned what James just threw, leading the salesman to reveal that it was a Feebas. Upon hearing this, Jessie got PTSD as she remembered her terrible experience, apparently a few weeks ago, back during the episode with Sullivan when he was trying to catch the Wish Cache, and then Jessie ended up getting a Feebas who kept trying to bite her hair and shit, and she remembered how she constantly had to throw him off, and yeah, she was traumatized by this bullshit, so she was adamantly against buying a Feebas as well. And we see a flashback of Jessie getting the Feebas off her hair. And Jessie then tells the Magikarp salesman to fuck right off, but the Magikarp salesman wasn't done attempting to convince Jessie and James to buy Feebas, as he informed Jessie that Feebas evolved into the most beautiful Pokemon if it was given enough time. Jessie refused to believe this, but the salesman pulled out a portable TV, telling Jessie to watch the video that was about to play, and the video then explained that Feebas was said to be a very ugly Pokemon with withered fins. Jessie wondered why the fuck this was supposed to make her want the Feebas, and how Feebas was supposed to be beautiful, but the salesman simply tells Jessie to be patient and keep listening. The TV program then explains that through enough contest Pokeblocks, the Pokemon would evolve into Milotic, the most beautiful Pokemon ever. So Feebas started off ugly as fuck, but then had a major glow up into Milotic. Jessie immediately falls in love with the Milotic, but Meowth and James still refused to buy the Feebas, since James was still scarred from his previous scams that the Magikarp salesman had done to him, and Meowth just didn't want to waste any money, since they didn't have any goddamn money. But Jessie had fallen in love with Milotic, being convinced to buy the Feebas, because Milotic was just so goddamn beautiful, and she thought they would get along great, and she literally had hearts develop in her eyes as she imagined her and Milotic's combined beauty. Although James and Meowth told the salesman that they weren't buying Feebas, but the salesman begged James to reconsider, putting on a likely fake, emotional story that depicted the salesman having a wife and 5 kids to feed back home, and they all hoped that his father would sell this one Feebas so that they could afford something to eat tonight. Also adding that one of his children was a little baby, and they needed food. And the salesman also adds that he had changed his ways, and he promised that he did not do swindling anymore. Jessie was convinced, wanting to get Milotic, so she ignored James and Meowth's concerns and asked how much Feebas was, admitting that Team Rocket did have no money, but the salesman simply said that he would give the Feebas in exchange for the pearl that Jessie was holding, believing it to be rare. James and Meowth tried to stop Jessie from giving up the pearl, reminding her that it was for Giovanni, but Jessie said that she could care less about what Giovanni wanted right now. She just wanted the beautiful Milotic, so that the two of them could be extra beautiful together. Basically, she thought that beauty was more important than Giovanni, and she accepted the salesman's offer, and gave the salesman the pearl in exchange for the Feebas. So now, the Magikarp salesman had Splunk's pearl. Anyways, Meowth was still against giving the pearl to the salesman, and tried to stop Jessie, and tried to get the pearl back from the salesman, but Jessie stopped Meowth from doing this by punching him in the face, since the Magikarp salesman proceeded to compliment Jessie on how beautiful she was, and how beautiful she would be once she got a Milotic. Yeah, this guy was totally still a swindler, wasn't he? He knew that Jessie would like the beauty compliment. Anyways, Jessie admitted that Feebas was ugly as fuck, and she dragged James and Meowth to a nearby lake, and put Feebas in it, so that Feebas could swim, and hopefully earn some experience from this, and become Milotic. As the Feebas swam, Meowth and James actually got excited, as they realized that Even though they couldn't give the pearl to Giovanni anymore, if Feebas evolved into Milotic, then they could just give Milotic to Giovanni, and he would like it because Milotic was so beautiful. So they all watched eagerly as Feebas swam, waiting for it to evolve, and it did begin to change, but the change was a bit different. Its tan color started leaving it, and they initially thought that this was a part of its evolution, but suddenly, its tail turned fully orange, shocking Team Rocket, and they were only shocked even more when the Feebas's color completely changed into orange and yellow, making Team Rocket realize that the Feebas, quote-unquote, was actually a goddamn Magikarp painted to look like a Feebas, with Feebas's whiskers painted to Magikarp's sides. Team Rocket were all extremely mad that they'd been swindled by that fucking bitch Magikarp salesman again, and Jessie was especially bitchy because she realized she would never get that beautiful Milotic, and she started to throw a tantrum as James picked up Magikarp from the lake, wondering what to do with it, as Magikarp flopped around in his hands, and James sighed in annoyance, cursing the Magikarp, even though he knew the Magikarp wasn't at fault for the salesman swindling them. Jessie continued to get even angrier, as she started to somehow breathe fucking fire in rage. I don't know how the fuck she did that, but, anyways, even though James was pissed off as well, he tried to calm Jessie down because he didn't want to get burned by the fire, so he tried to tell her that things could always get worse, but it seemed as though he jinxed things because just then, Ash and the gang showed up, finally finding Team Rocket. Ash and the gang, of course, demand that Team Rocket give the pearl back, but Jessie simply said that they didn't have it anymore, and Meowth quickly explained the situation, leading Ash and the gang to make fun of Team Rocket for being dumbass bitches for trading the pearl for a worthless Magikarp. With Brock and Ash also adding that Team Rocket were especially stupid to buy a Magikarp that was disguised as a Feebas, with May jumping in, calling Team Rocket absolutely goddamn motherfucking brain dead. And Max laughed about how Team Rocket got conned so easily, calling them not very bright, which wasn't nearly as bad as May's insult, but Meowth got pissed off at Max especially because Max was a kid, and argued to Max that Ash and the gang were stupid as well, and they would have done the same thing. But Max tells him that even a baby wouldn't have done something as dumb as Team Rocket did, making Meowth seethe with anger. Okay, Max, that was a bit of a better insult. Good job there. Team Rocket was so angry that they just didn't want to deal with Ash and the gang anymore, so they decided to run back to the carnival and try and find the prick salesman so that they could get the pearl back from him. And Ash and the gang follow, so they could find the salesman first and get the pearl back first, otherwise Team Rocket would steal it. Ash and the gang and Team Rocket eventually made it back to the carnival, and Team Rocket angrily marched through the entire place looking for the salesman, but they couldn't find him, even if they looked everywhere and went as fast as they could. Ash and the gang went as fast as they could as well, and they actually did manage to find him. And he actually had another fake Feebas in his hands, or at least it was probably a fake Feebas if he already sold one fake Feebas, and he was trying to sell it to a whole bunch of young children who had crowded around his stand. Ash and the gang knew they had to stop the scam, and Ash and Brock came up with an idea. Well, really, Ash was the one who came up with it, and he asked Brock what he thought of it, and Brock confirmed that it was a good idea. So Ash told him to do it, and he nodded as he went and hid behind a tree with his Mudkip, and had his Mudkip use water gun on the false Feebas, causing the paint to wash off and revealing it as a Magikarp. Ash knew that when the salesman saw this happen, he would likely try and come up with an excuse, so he told May and Max to help him distract the salesman so he wouldn't notice at first. So Ash, May, and Max proceeded to ask the salesman questions about the quote-unquote Feebas, and this allowed him to not see the paint come off of the Magikarp, although eventually the salesman got bored with the questions and looked to see that his scam had been revealed. So he immediately packs up his shit from his stand and tries to run away, but Brock stops him in his path, preventing his escape. Although Brock was only blocking one of the ways of his escape, he could just escape from the left or the right instead of forward. But just then, Ash, May, Max, and Mudkip all cornered the salesman, so he couldn't escape, and Ash and the gang all demanded the pearl back from him, which happened to be inside of his bag that he had packed up. The salesman tries to pretend that he didn't understand what the gang was talking about, although Brock tells him that they knew of his scam, and they knew that he had traded one of his fake Feebases for the pearl. Just then, Team Rocket showed up, having found Ash and the gang and the Magikarp salesman, as they throw a smoke bomb down to fill the area with smoke to distract everyone, as they then appear from the smoke, revealing themselves, and demand that the salesman take his Magikarp back in exchange for the pearl. Before the salesman could even deny, James throws the Magikarp directly into his hands to force him to take it, but before the Magikarp could actually land in the salesman's hands, Spoink uses Psychic to place the Magikarp on its head, and trying to make Magikarp its new pearl, leaving everyone to sigh in annoyance. This Magikarp wasn't even round, so it couldn't even act like a pearl at all. But then, everyone freaks out as Spoink passes out, apparently from being without its pearl for too long. And also, since it had used Psychic so much without having its Psychic power source, its pearl, so it was probably tired because of that. Seeing this, Ash knew Spoink was in danger, and he had to get the pearl back to make Spoink healthy again, so he grabbed the Magikarp salesman's bag and wrestled with him for the bag so he could get the pearl. But during the tug-of-war that went on between Ash and the salesman, the bag ripped open, and the pearl flied out, landing directly in Meowth's paws, pleasing all three of the Team Rocket members, although Ash once again demands that they give back the pearl to Spoink, since Spoink was in danger without it. But Jessie especially refused, wanting the pearl since it was super beautiful, and sent out her Dustox to stop Ash and the gang, leading Ash to send out his Torkoal to battle it, who was currently unleashing a lot of smoke in anger at the fact that Spoink was not doing well. The battle then begins with Dustox using Poison Sting, but Torkoal uses Iron Defense to withdraw into its shell to block the attack, and then Torkoal comes out of its shell and hits Dustox hard with a flamethrower. Seeing how Dustox was in trouble, James joined the fight, making it 2-on-1 by releasing his Cacnea, although of course Cacnea hugged James first, but then they went to use Needle Arm on Torkoal, but Torkoal simply went back into its shell using Iron Defense, which causes Cacnea's needle arm to basically do no damage, and also Cacnea gets knocked back by the hardness of Torkoal's shell, and then Cacnea gets knocked out as Torkoal uses Body Slam on it. Although Dustox was still active and went for a side beam on Torkoal, which severely damaged it, knocking it to the ground, but not out entirely yet, although Brock saw that Ash could use help, so he made the battle 2-on-2 by sending out his Mudkip and having it use Water Gun to knock Dustox back. Since May and Max were engrossed in watching the battle, everyone was distracted, so this gave the Magikarp salesman the opportunity to escape with all of his shit, including his Magikarp, although he decided to just leave the pearl behind, as if he tried to get it from Team Rocket, then that would just reveal his location to everyone, so he left without anyone noticing. At first, the Magikarp salesman walked away slowly, so as to not give away the fact that he was leaving, but once he was out of earshot, he ran like a madman, to parts unknown. Anyways, back to the battle. Cacnea had recovered and used Needle Arm on the knockdown Torkoal, but Torkoal was able to get up and dodge, and then used Overheat, blowing Cacnea straight into Meowth and knocking the pearl from his hands. Max instantly notices this and grabs the pearl and then puts it back on the passed out Spoink's head, which causes Spoink to regain consciousness and also energy, as it was able to hop up and down happily, thanking Max for giving it its pearl back. And now that Spoink was at full health, it could use its psychic attacks to the fullest extent. So it decided to battle Team Rocket for trying to go away with its pearl, using Confuse Ray on them, which confuses Cacnea, and Dustox, which makes them unable to battle. And then Spoink uses a Psychic and spins around, which makes Team Rocket spin while they're in the air and sends them blasting off, as Wobbuffet forcibly popped out of its Pokeball, blasting off as well. Ash and the gang all cheered in happiness, celebrating the fact that Team Rocket was gone, and they all compliment Spoink on how fucking powerful its psychic attacks were. However, the mood was a bit dampered, as Max pointed out that the Magikarp salesman was gone. They all look around the area for him, but then they all just shrug, saying that they got the pearl back from Spoink, and that was all that mattered. Happy that Spoink was better now. Max theorized that the Magikarp salesman would probably try and scam someone else someday, and maybe he was even trying to scam right now, but he just said that they would deal with the Magikarp salesman when they eventually found him again, not right now. And they then said their goodbyes to Spoink, as Spoink happily left, bouncing into the forest, relieved that it had its pearl back. With Spoink gone, Ash and the gang continued on their journey down the road to Fortree City.